Hello and welcome. I am Zabraxi. I never thought I'd get to say this, but get your guns ready. We're about to talk about a Mario game. Oh, come on! For many years, Nintendo was known for two things: innovating the video game industry in new and unique ways, and letting absolutely nobody at all even remotely think about using their beloved intellectual properties. There were many companies who thought they could do something new and interesting with Mario, but Nintendo knew better and just released New Super Mario Bros. On DS instead. I mean, people seem to like that game now, I think. This hesitation didn't mean that the Japanese juggernaut was too weary about Western studios developing games for them. Absolutely not. Let us not forget that one of the most beloved IPs, Star Fox, was originally developed by Argonaut Games, the creators of Croc. However, despite the incredibly possessive nature Nintendo typically exercised, there were in fact some exceptions. Arguably the most famous of these distinctions has to be Rareware and the development of Donkey Kong Country. To this day, many wonder just how Rare was able to convince Nintendo to give them this opportunity. Give it to me. This dominant behavior didn't last forever, though. In the mid-2010s, the same company that shocked the world by allowing Link into Soul Calibur 2 would now license out its characters to seemingly everyone. As time and carpal tunnel have taught all of us, it's that eventually the grip has to lessen. Nintendo's relaxing of its possession probably wasn't the benevolence or creative decision that many have attempted to credit it as. The Wii U, while being potentially the most underappreciated console in terms of its games library, probably right next to the Dreamcast, it had sold horribly for Nintendo and it crippled them financially. While still attempting to foster meaningful relationships with third parties, Nintendo's greatest bane, there wasn't much for Nintendo to bargain with though. I mean, you can't just demand Tekken Tag Tournament 2 release for the Wii U without giving up some costumes at the very least. And man, these still look so wrong. This era of Wii U hardship forged a particularly unlikely partnership though, as Davide Soliani, creative director for Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle, stated, quote, "In the last 20 years, the two companies did many things together that worked out really well, such as Just Dance, Zombie U, Red Steel, etc." End quote. Finally, someone mentioned Zombie U. Honestly, if you ignore all the crippling and gaping flaws, then it's pretty good. One of the most fascinating bits of Nintendo allowing others to use their character's likeness is the striking contradiction of the games themselves versus the nature of Nintendo's presence. Take Bayonetta for example. We have an action game that is part of the spectacle fighter genre. It's also incredibly lewd, dark, brutal, and over-sexualized to a point of absolute hilarity, and then you see the character running around as Princess Peach attacking with Bowser's fists and feet. I mean, there isn't much more disconcerting than seeing a female Link, or Samus, moan and groan while savagely slaughtering angels in some salacious manner in a Nintendo game. This gives off huge fan mod vibes. Also, let us not forget Fatal Frame Maiden of Black Water on the Wii U, where the protagonist can walk around fighting off poltergeists while cosplaying as Princess Zelda and Zero Suit Samus. I mean, that's Is this immersion breaking or awesome? I'm still struggling with that one. It was at least far more interesting than the swimsuit costumes that people genuinely boycotted the game over for removing them in the West, and I'm still not over that one yet. Like, really? Really, that was the hill you were gonna die on? But while these opposing aesthetics are so obvious, the creators of Kingdom Battle knew exactly why it worked. How in the world did someone genuinely think to take Mario and the loud and obnoxious Rabbids, throw them into a game together, and imagine that it would actually be successful? Well, it's for the same reason it worked in Bayonetta and Fatal Frame. Quote, "The answer is the contrast. Mario is a well-known hero. Rabbids are well-known chaotic creatures. So we said, if we combine the humor of that contrast and the gameplay mechanics that we can invent because of this contrast, we can bring something new. I love the idea of the Rabbids throughout the game learning how to become heroes for Mario, and Mario learning how to crack a joke." End quote. Leaning into this chaos is legitimately one of the largest reasons that many even wanted to try this game out. There was this curiosity of how in the world does this actually work? How do you write Mario, who basically only knows how to yell "Wahoo!" and put him side by side with a small white rabbit whose only communication is to scream "Wah!" at the top of its lungs. Keep in mind that this character development that Davide was aiming for is practically non-existent, actually. Mario doesn't develop or grow because, well, he can't. He isn't a character to tell a story with. He's a catalyst for events to occur around. The Rabbids also don't really learn how to become heroes. They just scream and yell and destroy everything, and it just so happens that they're the protagonists. Well, perhaps Rabbid Peach is the only one who develops any sort of meaningful personality and growth, but even that is only really due to the additional Donkey Kong DLC that would come out after the game's launch. In terms of the base game, the main cast grows basically none. The character with the most growth by far is the villain, Bowser Jr. His antics against Mario and the Rabbids isn't just entertaining, which it is totally, by the way, but Kingdom Battle also takes a bit of a psychological deep dive into the reasons behind Bowser Jr.'s actions, and not just in Kingdom Battle, but in general. There's also such a genuine goofiness to Bowser Jr., as if the writing team acknowledged that this is still just a child and they're kind of poking fun at that. Like, take this scene from World 2 Chapter 3, where Bowser Jr. is trying to play incredibly tough and aggressive to Mario as he outlines his plans for world domination. I mean, this is just so hilarious. Also, can we just talk about how adorable it is that Bowser is on vacation, but he's still checking up on his son to make sure he's doing his homework? That just puts this whole different view on Bowser compared to just the oppressive monster with little personality that we know him for in the mainline series. What a cute dad. Or how about this line in World 2 Chapter 8, where Bowser Jr. yells at Mario to leave him and Spawny alone because he actually says this, has things to do and daddy issues to repress. Man, that is good. Knowing why a villain thinks the way they do isn't just good storytelling, but it's also surprising that Nintendo even allowed such a thing to occur, considering how much Miyamoto hates when the Paper Mario games attempt to do the same thing. This is not a Paper Mario video. This is not a Paper Mario video. Don't start complaining. It's not one of those yet. It's not. And since Miyamoto has been brought up, then I have to address the obvious. It is impossible to talk about Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle without acknowledging the crying guy in the audience during the announcement. No, it's not actually. Just don't talk about it. Don't acknowledge it. Pretend it doesn't exist and just move on. Yeah, but What? You what? Fine. I want a Legend of Dragoon sequel. And guess what? I'm never getting it. So sometimes you just don't get what you want. Okay, but how would you feel if Miyamoto said he was proud of the game you made? I'd probably cry. Shigeru Miyamoto helped announce Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle into the world at E3 and made it a point to shout out the creative director for the title, Davide Soliani. When the character cut to Davide in the crowd, seeing this man in tears melted the hearts of many, and for better or for worse, this very quickly became his legacy. When pressed about how he felt in the audience that day, Soliani stated, quote, "As a Nintendo player growing up with Miyamoto games, he was almost a father telling me bedtime stories every night," end quote. Honestly, yeah, I actually can totally get behind this sentiment. My own life as well has been incredibly shaped so much by Shigeru Miyamoto that I'm confident even meeting the man would fill me with so much emotion that I might even forget about The Legend of Dragoon for a moment. But only a moment. So what we have here is a strategy game crossover between the Mushroom Kingdom and the Glade of Dreams. Well, actually, this isn't entirely true. While the Rabbids themselves are from the Rayman franchise, you would have absolutely no idea of this fact by playing Kingdom Battle. In fact, Rayman and anything Rayman styled is entirely absent. The title of this adventure is incredibly literal. This is genuinely a Mario game plus the Rabbids. It's not entirely a problematic element, but for a crossover, the team at Ubisoft went really soft on this one. Perhaps in hindsight, this will be a case where the first title in the series serves as some proof of concept before really embracing the larger potential that a crossover between Mario and Rayman could have, but in this entry at least, it's, again, literally Mario and the Rabbids. Now about that XCOM inspiration though, for those of you who don't know, XCOM is a strategy series that involves residents of Earth protecting themselves from alien invaders. There's a couple things to note here though. XCOM is incredibly dark and notoriously brutal in terms of difficulty. The franchise is regularly revered for just how challenging it can be, and its gameplay style is incredibly unique to boot, which forces players to follow its rules and only its rules. The cover-based movement, the RNG tactics, its masterclass in level design, and so much more makes every entry in the franchise immediately stand out versus every other strategy game. So of course, this makes anything that's inspired by it equally obvious from where that impression came from. With all that said, my question then becomes, how? Seriously, how did this happen? Who's the mad genius who at the meeting decided to chime up when they were talking about a critical crossover project with Nintendo and tell everybody, you know, I've been playing XCOM lately, and the brutality, the murder, the terrible gore, and the emotional struggle and turmoil of losing those closest to you as aliens invade your home planet, that got me to thinking we should make a Mario game. How does this even come to someone's mind? Like, let's take Super Mario World and Final Fantasy VI, let's smack them together. Yo, this game actually owns though. Games like Super Mario RPG aren't crossovers in the traditional sense. Turning Mario into a turn-based role-playing game isn't necessarily a mind-blowing concept, just a really interesting but unlikely mashup. The same goes for Mario as a strategy game. I mean, it was inevitable eventually, but it's the chaotic addition of the Rabbids in this trifecta of Mario, Rabbids, and strategy that not only makes this so unpredictable, but an experiment that could only be concocted by mad geniuses. So, naturally, the next obstacle becomes, how in the world do you get Mario and the Rabbids together in lore? I sat on this for quite a while when I saw the original previews, and all I could think of was that, I don't know, maybe you take some child who just so happens to be a super genius, you have them be huge fans of Mario, and then they get this experiment that goes completely wrong, and now you have Mario and the Rabbids and the technology, and they literally combine in unrelated things, and bam! The most contrived and forced way to combine franchises possible, but also so on the nose that it's practically satirical. Yep, that's exactly what they did. I just described the premise. You know, I really should plug that hole in the ceiling. One of the immediately evident aspects of Kingdom Battle is that this feels like such a polished experience. Ubisoft is notorious for releasing buggy and outright broken games. It's common to play a several $100 million budget Ubisoft title and have most of that adventure still feel slippery, clunky, buggy, and just overall incomplete. Like, take Assassin's Creed Origins, for example. While it's a fine game that actually rebooted the hype for the franchise pretty effectively, even it still has some incredibly rough edges years later. June of 2022 released the big next-gen PS5 patch for Origins, which was released 5 years prior to that point. In excitement, I rushed to turn on the ugliest console I have ever owned, download the PS5 update, and very quickly realized that while the game was running at a clean and smooth 60 FPS now, the bugs, awkward glitches, movement quirks, and regular combat hiccups were occurring at the same rate that I remembered during the 2017 launch. The only difference now is that it was in a nice smooth 60 frames per second and running on seriously one of the most obnoxious looking consoles the video game industry has ever created. Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle just doesn't suffer this traditional Ubisoft plague. The game wasn't released in a broken state. Movement, actions, and animations are all well tested and well refined. I often credit companies like Nintendo and Blizzard for their unprecedented polish. While Blizzard Entertainment has definitely decided that it wants to be the villain of our story in recent years, the phrase Blizzard polish was spoken and written across countless reviews for decades of releases. You know, back during those days when Blizzard made games that its fans actually wanted to play. Nintendo, as well, is constantly praised for the same attention to refinement, unless it's online play, in which case, oh good god, good luck. In fact, it was such a big deal when Breath of the Wild released and was littered with bugs. But then, even then, the occurrence of these visuals and mechanical glitches was a fraction of what the AAA industry was typically known for, especially in an open world genre. Kingdom Battle falls firmly into the camp of Nintendo and Blizzard polish. The game was released completed and touched up. Contrary to what has become standard practice, Kingdom Battle didn't need to rely on post-launch fixes and releases to solve crippling issues. While I am a fan of many Ubisoft titles like Assassin's Creed, Prince of Persia, Splinter Cell, Far Cry, and more, I am absolutely disgusted by their constant approach to release broken, patch later. Oh, would you look at that? An Assassin's Creed game just got released and it only took months and months of patching in order to make sure everything was actually playable. Oh boy, $60 is nowhere near enough money for an incomplete and broken experience. How about you charge me $70 and I'll expect even less? Seriously though, does anyone remember the Call of Juarez games or Watch Dogs? How about the absolutely horrific Immortals Phoenix Rising on the Switch at launch? That game couldn't even maintain a consistent 20 FPS and it still had the audacity to lock content away on day one, requiring $100 to unlock the full game on day one. Oh, well, golly gee, Mr. Ubisoft, man, that sounds like a smashing deal. Yes, it does. Yet here we are with Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle, which in no way follows those business trends and doesn't need to constantly fix holes up and bugs on release. All patched up. I've been burned by Ubisoft releases so many times that I've actually adopted a practice now where I don't even buy a new Ubisoft game until at least 6 months after launch, even if the reviews have been good. Despite the praise and credit that I just gave Kingdom Battle about not having that same issue, even then I still followed my new behavior and didn't end up buying the game until a couple years after release, despite being excited about it at launch. Now that I've fully completed Kingdom Battle, I could definitely say that what we got is really special. It's often the case that games misstep during the introduction. Hilariously, this is arguably the most important time not to screw it up, and even I know how important it is to nail the intro to a video, for example. Hello and oh, I'm facing the wrong way. Hello! There are two critically important elements of a video game intro. You have to nail down the pacing and the tutorial. Players have to stay interested in what's going on so that they stick around for the more deep content coming later. However, you also have to be able to teach the player a lot. Not only do they need to know the obvious, like the controls, but tutorialization can also extend to the lore, the rules of the environment that they're in, the mechanics of this new world you've built, and the nuances around this new experience the player is about to embark on. There are fantastic examples of pacing and tutorialization during introductions. Mega Man X is often heralded as one of the best first levels in video games, and yeah, that's hard to argue. Without a single button prompt or informative note to the player, the setting is presented effectively, the controls are conveyed through raw gameplay alone, and the pacing is spot on with ever-changing enemy designs and patterns, all culminating in a boss encounter that you not only lose, but also introduces characters that you'll strive to emulate. It's not just retro games that can nail this either. Nier Automata spends the first hour or so of the experience by throwing players through multiple, entirely different genres of gameplay, making it practically impossible to get bored as everything is ever shifting around you. You'd think that this could be incredibly overwhelming for players though in terms of learning controls for all of these different elements and styles, But no, Nier Automata maps the same button layout to similar actions, regardless of gameplay style. The same button for attacking, the same for movement, dodging, and everything else shows just how similar interactions can be between different gameplay genres, while also being able to convey this all within the first chapter of the experience. Now, what the hell does Mega Man X and Nier Automata have to do with Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle? Absolutely nothing. While Kingdom Battle doesn't perfect gameplay introductions, I do think it's one of the best I've seen in quite a long time, and I just really want to make sure it gets that recognition, just like in Super Meat Boy. Wait, don't get distracted again. Mario plus Rabbids first. We could talk about Meat Boy another time. The opening chapter of Kingdom Battle follows a slow but effective method of teaching. We'll get introduced to something like movement and attacking, and then be followed up with an arena to test those mechanics. The next battle will be focused around movement mechanics, specifically with a stage that accommodates that exact lesson. Then the dash mechanic and a place to try it. The next encounter is the team jump and also allows players to practice more advanced movement options, since now they've been able to get a little more comfortable with that mechanic so far. Then you culminate all of these individual trials into one final encounter at the end that forces the player to execute on everything they've just recently learned. The funny thing about explaining tutorials is that we all know this is the best way to learn. You give someone some information, you then show them the skills that they're going to need, and then you give them a setting in order to allow them to execute their skills upon this information they've been provided. We all know this because it's pretty obvious, right? Yes, it is. So then how do so many games completely screw it up? Much of Kingdom Battle is all about being slow and steady. Some people do like it fast and rough, but it's important to move like a river's flow. Why did I write that? There's a big reason this piecemeal approach not only works, but was a perfect choice for Kingdom Battle. Ubisoft had to go into this project assuming the player may have never once touched a cover-based strategy game before. Let's be honest here, I can't really imagine the demographic crossover for Mario and XCOM is that large. Though to be fair, the cross between Animal Crossing and Doom was a surprise in 2020, so who knows? The dawdling pace of Kingdom Battle is perfect for newcomers of the strategy genre, but it could definitely be a sluggish experience for strategy veterans. I could definitely say the story battles often felt far too easy, but this is where Mario plus Rabbids yet again has a backup plan of sorts: the exploration moments. Between every combat scenario, there is a subsection that allows you to engage in puzzles, secrets, and other challenges. To bring up pacing again, these moments are absolutely perfect pace breakers, and their timing is phenomenal. These areas are littered with block-based logic puzzles, red coin chasing, block-based logic puzzles, blue coin challenges, block-based logic puzzles, and even hidden secrets that are unlocked by, you guessed it, ability unlocks. Oh, and block-based logic puzzles. So, yeah, the variety isn't perfect. A lot of it boils down to doing a Zelda-style block or switch puzzle, and then after a couple battles, you'll do that again. However, I also don't want to undersell these exploration moments either. There is a lot of fun in trying to find the secrets and hidden items because you could receive some really interesting rewards. Yeah, sometimes it's just artwork unlocked, or heck, maybe a music track, but you can also get new character weapons too by searching around the world. This type of action-adventure activity is far from traditional in the strategy space, and it's such a welcomed breath of fresh air. It matches perfectly to the team's vision and goal that they stated up front. Quote, "We wanted to try and renew the tactics genre. Not revolutionize it, but renew it," end quote. This addition to a common formula actually reminds me so much of Diddy Kong Racing. Having the ability to discover and unlock levels and collectibles in the hub world of DKR, it didn't radically change how we interface with kart racers, but what it did do was renew how we looked at what could be a part of those experiences. There's a reason why even decades later, Diddy Kong Racing is often brought up in discussion, despite the kart racing genre having grown exponentially in the years since that title's release. Fire Emblem Three Houses did something similar with the Academy sections by introducing the social aspects of many other famous JRPGs into a strategy RPG to serve as a pacebreaker between battles. This has now forced players and designers alike to consider what really should be standard. Except maybe block-based logic puzzles. I think we've gotten more than enough of those. Now, about the characters. If you had any concern about whether or not the characters were going to be good or not, then, well, I'm happy to report that they're alright. Dude,
These bananas are nuts!
Mechanically speaking, the characters of Kingdom Battle have a lot of crossover to one another. That can be weapons or even similar special abilities. Everyone does have at least one thing that's special about them, but that's usually it. Our roster is Mario, Luigi, Peach, Yoshi, and a Rabbid version of each. Something to note is that how you play the Mario character is in no way correlated to how you interact with their Rabbid clone. All 8 of these characters are their own thing. Since you have 8 or so combination of attacks and abilities, this allows you to create some very interesting combinations with the team. In fact, it was often really fun alternating out members of the team each time I unlocked a new character, so I could see how their playstyle would align with the others. Since there's so much spillover in terms of access to weapon types and even passive abilities, this actually gives you some flexibility with who and how you plan to plug the holes in your composition with. This can even be so small as managing which special effects you have access to. Critical hits in Kingdom Battle trigger a status effect unique to each weapon and character. Only certain characters have access to certain statuses, so while Mario and Rabbid Peach's primary weapon is the same, their status effects are very different. This can still allow some to shine in their own way, but it can also cause weird issues because of that ability spillover I mentioned earlier. Take Peach and Rabbid Peach, for example. Rabbid Peach starts the game off as your frontline character, and it makes sense that she has access to a heal ability as well as a personal shield. She is clearly intended to be the frontline support. However, you'll then eventually unlock Peach, who is absolutely freaking nuts, and was easily my MVP in the story playthrough. This chick has access to a shotgun for her main weapon, immediately making her a more offensive frontliner to Rabbid Peach. And Peach also has a heal, but it isn't just an ability that's tied to a cooldown. No, every single time she team jumps off someone, she can choose where she lands, and it will heal everyone around her, herself included. You can do this each and every turn. So the issue really quickly became that she did more damage than Rabbid Peach and had a more steady stream of healing. So basically, once I got Peach, Rabbid Peach just kind of sat on the bench for most of my playthrough. And this is most poignantly shown with characters like Yoshi and Rabbid Yoshi.
Oh, I love these characters!
Not only do you not get these characters until the very end of the game, but they have almost nothing in terms of unique components, and Rabbid Yoshi doesn't even have reliable damage output.
Oh, I hate these characters.
Granted, it's totally adorable to see Rabbid Yoshi using a machine gun and Yoshi doing his absolute best to carry around a bazooka. I mean, just look how cute he is.
Oh, I love these characters again!
But nothing sucks more, though, than the fact that you don't even get Yoshi until the very, very end of the game, where there's less than a couple hours left in this 15 to 20 hour journey.
Oh, I hate them again.
The roughest part is that these two don't provide anything truly meaningful in terms of mechanics, and while Yoshi is still a decent character, Rabbid Yoshi is genuinely just so unreliable with basically no upside. These two feel very clearly like they were thrown in at the last minute to round out the cast. Especially if you look at the game's sequel, Sparks of Hope, the only two non-returning characters are these two, and instead replaced with Edge and Bowser. Now, despite the issues that I've been mentioning, I do think it's important to point out that there are still some incredibly fun combinations. While not entirely necessary to tinker with too much across the main campaign, since it is rather easy, the challenge levels and the end game bonus challenges, oh man, they really force you to capitalize on each and every character strength. Seriously, those final 4 endgame challenges took me an entire afternoon, probably 4 to 5 hours alone to complete these 4 stages. I mean, one of the challenges is to fight almost every single boss and mini-boss in the game all at once. But man, it is so satisfying once you get it. This is the kind of content where you really start to notice every single character's strengths and weaknesses. And unfortunately, that also meant seeing that Rabbid Yoshi and Yoshi were basically useless on every scenario. But then it opened my eyes to the possibility, like Rabbid Mario's ability to brutally punish everything in his path, and he's equipped with strong frontline weapons, making him a force to be reckoned with. Being able to dash into multiple enemies and also causing an AoE explosion on each and every dash, and then light someone up with the boom shot or hammer, Man, it is just so much damage. Or you can upgrade Rabid Luigi to cause his dashes to lifesteal, allowing him to constantly move in and out of battle to recover while still being able to take shots along the way. Also, that lifesteal applies to every player in your party if you damage them when the debuff is still active. When you combine him with the healing potential of Peach and Rabid Peach that I mentioned prior, you have a tanky team that basically can't die until the final boss battles. And then we have Luigi.
Oh, I hate this character.
In his cowardice, he serves as the sniper of the group, and while I'd love to make fun of Luigi at every chance I have, and boy do I love doing that, he's actually kind of nuts. If you master ground control and proper unit placement, Luigi can single-handedly win battles for you.
Oh, I love this character.
The last real unique elements to the characters to mention are the super effects I mentioned prior, which is just a cute term for status effects, which just raises the question, why not just call them status effects? Each character only has access to a few statuses that their weapons can apply in battle. These effects are push, which, well, pushes, bounce, which is like a more vertical push, burn, which sets the character on fire and forces them to run around, setting everything and everyone else they touch ablaze with them, and of course, your party members when they're set on fire always particularly want to go out and hold hands with everyone every single time they are set on fire and it kills your whole team. There's also vamp, which puts a debuff on the target, and each time someone deals damage to them, the damage dealer is healed for a small portion of that attack. Then there's my favorite, honey, which just locks people into place, which is absolutely hilarious as everyone unloads everything into a single target that is helpless and can't escape the bombardment of bullets you let loose onto them. Man, Mario game murder is awfully fun. The last few effects are Ink, which prevents the target from attacking, Freeze, which prevents the target from using special abilities, and Stone, which forces the target to lose a turn. These combinations are all very simple at their core, but how you use each one in tandem with the others is where much of this simple to learn, hard to master gameplay starts to come in. It's another example of how Davide and the team were going for a player-controlled, foreseeable pandemonium in battles. Quote, "Our game is predictable because it needs to be solid and reliable in terms of combat, but there is a small chance of unpredictability that you have in Mario Kart, but in a combat game."
Quick question. What does Banjo-Kazooie, Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning, and Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle have in common? That's right. They're all video games.
The music within Kingdom Battle is that immediately noticeable, cheerful whimsy that Grant Kirkhope is so famous for. Kingdom Battle is definitely closer to that older N64 style of Kirkhope's music, more so than his most recent work, and I think that fits the Mario environment so well. One of the best things about the soundtrack isn't just the music though. The attention to detail in the backgrounds is so cute. Like how in World 1 the flowers match the beat of the music's horns, or how in World 2, the Rabbids match the drum beat of whatever track is playing. To cast Kirkhope was yet another dream for Davide, though. Quote, "As soon as we understood that Nintendo was happy with what we were proposing, everything started to happen at light speed, and the team grew quickly, and after many meetings, we decided to call Grant Kirkhope, and he's one of my, I would say, favorite video game composers apart from Koji Kondo," end quote. Honestly, despite him being the creative director, I can only imagine that working with one of your idols has to be intimidating. It's hard work, yeah, but it needs to be done. However, how do you genuinely sit down in a meeting and confront Miyamoto that a game design decision is bad? Or tell Nobuo Uematsu that the song just isn't right? Quote, "Actually, the first month and a half, I was almost ashamed and scared to ask for changes, give feedback, because he was an idol to me," end quote.
Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle had its own plethora of DLC. It wasn't all that bad, but it was the typical Ubisoft stuff that you kind of know. It was weapon skins and other cosmetics that were usually released to you after you beat the game, making them completely pointless, or there were some that were there at launch, which begged the question, why was it not just part of the game I spent $60 on? But there was one. There was one DLC that was promoted as a story campaign, and it was obvious, right? I already knew the crossover we had, Mario and Rabbids, the Glade of Dreams and the Mushroom Kingdom. We were finally about to get some Rayman recognition. Okay, never mind. Well, a Donkey Kong DLC could be really cool, but who would be the villain? Rabbid Kong? Again? Really? But I've already beaten him, so I don't know what more you'd get out of that. It's not like the character's scary or anything anymore. Oh god, this is bad! No, Banana! What do I do? He's going bananas!
The DK DLC is absolutely brilliant, and if you have played Kingdom Battle but skipped this, you really should go back. If you plan on trying Kingdom Battle, then this is a must play after the credits roll. What you get is another 5 or so hours on a self-contained story where Rabbid Kong and Rabbid Peach get warped to DK Island. The only 3 characters to play are Rabbid Peach, Donkey Kong, and Rabbid Cranky Kong. What makes this mini-campaign so interesting, though, is that the designers are allowed to have incredibly specific mechanics that revolve around each individual character, though it's DK who really gets the special treatment this time around. He has the ability to climb ledges and also swing on vines to move across platforms incredibly efficiently. For sure, this would be super game-breaking in the base campaign, and having to design each stage with him in mind without just making him either busted or useless would have been a balancing nightmare for the leveling designers. Even Cranky Kong having access to what is essentially a long-range shotgun is totally busted, but considering the designers can specifically plan encounters knowing that you'll 100% be using this comp every time, it makes it all just feel so finely tuned. There's so much to do in this adventure. The exploration moments are easily the best part of the whole game, as there's this level of verticality now that is utilized to full effect. The explorable areas still have their fair share of repetition, as I mentioned prior in the base game, but the progress here from before makes me incredibly excited to see what Sparks of Hope will have in store for us, because that jump was huge. I don't really have too much more to say on this. It's basically more of the same in terms of basic gameplay elements. Donkey Kong easily becomes the most interesting character across all of Kingdom Battle in terms of mechanics, though. The mobility, special abilities, and boomerang-style weapon just give him so much utility. On the other hand, Rabbid Peach and Rabbid Cranky's interactions are quite possibly the funniest moments in the entire game. It's such a classic young person versus old person rivalry, but it's amplified to 11 given the personalities of the Rabbids.
Is he gone yet? Oh, another banana. Well, I guess this is my life now.
Rabbid Kong does return as a villain here, and honestly, good. While most of the bosses in the base game didn't really get a lot of time to shine outside Bowser Jr., this is definitely a chance to give Rabbid Kong another shot. Again, most bosses didn't really get a story or the opportunity to stand out, but many of them were new creations that we had no real connection to here. While this is definitely still something I hope Sparks of Hope will address, the biggest insult was definitely to Rabbid Kong. Being the Rabbid mix of one of the most iconic characters in video game history, he deserved way better than just being a boss that shows up, gets beaten, and is left behind. This campaign wonderfully dives into the tyrant that Rabbid Kong slowly becomes. This wonderfully mirrors the battles of Donkey Kong and King K. Rool, but this time the oppressive dictator with an army is now a rabid clone of DK himself. It's a wonderfully mirrored story to the classic Donkey Kong adventures. Given more of these types of short-form stories allows for the team to create much more refined and imaginative DLC campaigns, and it excites me for what's to come in future titles, especially since I know that Rayman is getting a DLC in Sparks of Hope.
Rayman, finally!
It's so uplifting to know that the first adventure was so well done, and I can't wait to see what the Glade of Dreams might have in store in the sequel. Davide Soliani and his team did something truly remarkable. They took an unlikely partnership like Ubisoft and Nintendo and created a game with all of the perks and benefits of both companies with almost none of the downsides. There was a level of creativity that was impressive given the need to merge these two incredibly unlikely universes. Not only did we get a strategy game that is way better than it has any right to be, but we also got more character development from Mario characters than we ever have outside the Paper Mario games. Whether it's Peach coming down like Mary Poppins only to shotgun something in the face, or Bowser Jr.'s absolutely top-notch dialogue and development, Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle succeeds in making an interesting Mario world in ways that the Paper Mario franchise is currently unable to. The future holds the potential for even more. Perhaps since Davide and the team have shown just how well they can write Bowser Jr. and the Rabbid characters, perhaps Sparks of Hope will give the team the opportunity to have even more personality shine through the Mario, Luigi, Peach, and Bowser characters, and I'm excited to see what they do with the all-new original Edge. Being able to watch Davide live his dream by working with his favorite game designer and his favorite composer is an inspiring story that should motivate all of us. Great job, everyone. I can't wait to see what you have in store for us next time.
I still can't believe that we might have a fresh Mario strategy franchise on our hands, and with a first entry this damn good, I've got a few sparks of hope for what's to come. And when that day does arrive, I'm gonna be well armed and equipped and ready to go. I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye!